Inside IT Automation, a ScriptRunner production.
Welcome back to another episode of Inside IT Automation. I'm your host, Heiko, and today's guest is someone who brings decades of wisdom from the front lines of innovation. Shomit Ghose is a Silicon Valley venture capitalist, former tech executive and educator who spent his career scaling data-centric startups and advising on the future of AI, which will be a big topic in our conversation. He's a general partner at Onset Ventures and a lecturer at Berkeley University. Welcome, Shomit.
Thanks for having me, Heiko. And by the way, I'm a partner at Clear Vision Ventures. Onset was my old fund. So the past few years it's been Clear Vision, but that's okay. Otherwise, all correct. So happy to be here, Heiko. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. And so we met through the German Accelerator Program, which is a program from the German government helping German software companies to increase their business and their footprint in the US. And you had been our lead mentor.
Right. No, and it was such a pleasure to have met you through that. And the German Accelerator, I think, as we both believe, Heiko, is such a great program. And the goal of that is to help give a crash course to German entrepreneurs, German startups, on how Silicon Valley works, so that those startups can form their global expansion plans and financing plans, et cetera.
Yeah, it was amazing. I would say a big eye opener in many areas that we learned a lot of things from you as our lead mentor and the whole program, and actually meeting you in person in Palo Alto was really great. And yeah, and I think it's a great opportunity for German companies who want to be successful in the US, because there are so many things to learn about this huge and important market. So that was really amazing. Which kind of maybe brings me to one of the first questions. So you kind of started as an engineer, right? So that you have an engineering background, and you became an entrepreneur and a venture capitalist. So what lessons from your early tech career still guide your investment decisions today? Is there anything?
Such a good question. Yeah. So as you mentioned, I started life off as a software engineer, studied computer science at Berkeley, and my first few jobs were doing software engineering at startups. The one constant that it's so obvious, but it's so easy to lose sight of, is that it's all about the money. It's not about the technology, and it may be painful for us as engineers to say that. What you mean? It's not about the technology? No, it's all about the money. Meaning, it's always about the business model. And as an investor, this lesson that you asked about, Heiko, impacts me every day, because I see a lot of cool technologies, but in the end, I always have to think about, what is the business model? What's the driver for this? Because if there's no economic driver, it doesn't really matter how cool the technology is. It's not worth investing in. And in fact, nowadays, with the complete explosion of AI deals going on, lots of super cool technologies, but actually in the end, not that many super cool ideas, because it still has to get back to what is the business model, what is the economic driver. That's where coolness lies.
Awesome. So, and would you say many founders still concentrate, let's say, too much on technology and less on the business cases and things like that?
Yeah, that can happen very easily, and in particular, it happens quite a bit when founders communicate that company to the investor. And the technology actually may really be cool, which is great, and it may be really unique, which is also really great. But what the investor cares about is, how do I get paid on this? And investors get paid on exits. Exits happen because companies have growing revenue streams and profitability. And those things are a byproduct of business model. What problem do you solve that someone will pay you for? And so it's always about the business model. The technology may be cool, but it really may not solve a materially large business problem. So no one cares. No one cares there's no revenue growth, in which case the investor doesn't care.
Yeah.
So as a startup entrepreneur, what are the first things you're going to do? First thing you're going to say, if you're meeting someone, say, "Hi, my name is Heiko, and I'm solving the $50 billion a year problem for." All right. So your first name comes out. We don't even hear your last name, but we do hear the size of the business problem that you're addressing. If that's interesting to me, then we'll find out about the technology. But first, let's hear about the quantifiable business problem.
Yeah. So that's I think an important lesson for a lot of technology-driven companies, right? And I can see ourselves here as well. So it's one of the things that really kind of change the perspective, I would say.
It's an easy trap to fall into, because as technologists, we get enamored by technology. And again, there's a peril in that. What should we be getting enamored by is the business model. The technology is secondary in importance.
Yeah, but of course, technology is important. So of course, we have to talk about IT automation and AI as also one of the big topics for you. So how do you define intelligent automation today? How is it evolving with the rise of agentic AI and large language models?
Right. So all of those are tied together. Agentic AI is built on top, as we know, it's built on top of chain of thought. Chain of thought is a great way of encapsulating application logic, workflows, collaboration, all of those things, which is very nicely captured by LLMs. So we think about large language models and the impact that they have. As professionals, they'll have some impact to us because it helps us do some research or summarize meeting notes, etc. And that's fine, but maybe that impact is still pretty small. Where the biggest impact of LLMs will be is in helping to build these agentic AI technologies, which will span, I think, in the end, every industry. And so LLMs actually have a really large future market impact because they are the underlying technology foundation of agentic AI. When you think about within the IT automation space itself, as you and I've talked about before, Heiko, every company on the planet today is, your number one asset is the IT. It's about the information. It's about how you process that information, period. So IT is so central to the execution and success of every company, regardless of what industry that you're in. In fact, pick a company at random from the Russell 5000 or the Fortune 500, et cetera, and call them up and say, we're going to turn off your IT today. It'll be a disaster, absolute disaster. Way more than if you said, we're going to turn off your logistics for the day. We're going to turn off your manufacturing for the day. The biggest impact would be, what if we turn off your IT for the day? That's how impactful it is. So, Napoleon said an army travels on its stomach. I think it's fair to say that today companies travel on their IT. And because of that, IT automation is so important because the technologies are developing very quickly. The competitive demands are heavy, the business demands are heavy. So IT has to be very nimble and very powerful. That's really tough to do both, right? This is where IT automation comes in, because it helps you be powerful and be nimble. And getting back to the crux of this question here, Heiko, how do we make IT powerful and nimble at the same time going forward? It's through agentic AI.
It's definitely in the center of every future development, right? There's no way. Absolutely. There's no way around, right? And
that's right.
And let's say, given just last week, all the announcements on Google I/O and Microsoft Build, it's right. AI everywhere, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that we saw quite a bit of activity from Google, and Microsoft, I think, is being also very astute because they're focusing their AI efforts really on the corporate solution set, which is great. I like that a lot. And they're making AI practically accessible in enterprise operations, period. And doing it in so many different ways. That I saw this announcement, they called it KABLAM, I think, which is knowledge-based integration with language models. Because, of course, how do you drive high-fidelity execution from your agentic AI as it spills through a language model? The better the prompt is, the better the output's going to be. How do you make the prompt really powerful? Gee, among other things, what if you could integrate in knowledge bases? And Microsoft is helping to build that infrastructure too. So to your point exactly, Heiko, there's so much activity out there today, but it reflects where the market is absolutely going to go and is going.
Yeah, and the speed is kind of mind-boggling, right? So you really have to be on your toes. I remember, I think one thing that you told me where when you, I think every Wednesday you have your lecture at Berkeley, is where you really have to, in the morning, you have to check if what happened since last week to be up to date for your students, right?
Yeah, exactly. Really well said and well noted. Yeah. I had lectures, 3-hour lectures every Wednesday afternoon at Berkeley this past semester. And I would be finalizing the lecture slides Wednesday morning because the pace of innovation was so fast. Something had been announced the previous day or even that morning, which actually related to the lecture topic of the day. And this also means that for us as practitioners in the IT space, we can't sleep. We have to keep, I know, we can't sleep. We have to wake up every morning and think, what's happened today that's different than was yesterday? And that's how we stay competitive. So it requires this hyper curiosity in the end.
Exactly. That's what I see. You just said, Shomit, curiosity, right? I think that's the main driver for, especially in this AI age, right? Because you have to be curious about what's next and not relying on what you did yesterday if it becomes obsolete very, very quickly.
Yeah, and it moves so quickly that if you and I aren't curious, then our competitors are curious. Guess who's going to win? Because they've discovered a new way of doing something, which is much more efficient than how we've been doing it. And our information is only a week old, but it's obsolete.
Which is kind of unheard of, right? From developments in the past. I mean, yes, of course, internet, IT, it changed over the decades, but the speed of innovation, I think, is really a complete new era here.
Right. That's right. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that we have to live our lives by here going forward is the need to have this curiosity that's constant, which is part of our job, so that we can assess what's happening technologically, coming out of universities, coming out of big companies like Google, Microsoft, et cetera, coming out of our competitors, so that we can make sure that we're employing the best practices, period, in IT, because as we talked about, that's the defining feature of every company.
Absolutely. And I remember when we, during the program, at one point, we talked about data and data strategy, which is, of course, at the core of AI. So how do you see, what kind of role do you see does a data strategy plays to have a successful agentic AI IT automation implementation?
Yeah, such a good question. Yeah, so I think that there are 3 tiers to every solution. The first tier is, what is the business model? Because if something does not yield material economic benefit, don't do it. There is no point in doing it. So we only solve problems that are economically meaningful within our company. So the first step is, let's understand what the problem is and the efficiencies we can gain. Okay, so that's the finished product that we want, right? So every product is built on a raw material. So what's the raw material in AI? It's data. So if we have the product in mind, so it's like, you're there, you are wearing a cotton shirt. I want to make cotton shirts. That's my business model. The first thing I need is to figure out that people will buy cotton shirts. So the second thing I need is, where do I get cotton? And if I can find that second thing, in AI's case, it's the data, then I can figure out the AI model. Just like, if I know that Heiko will buy a cotton shirt, I can find a supply of cotton. The third thing in priority is the factory to produce the shirts. But without the cotton, no factory will be fed. So when we think about AI, let's start with the business model. Once we've established that, let's think about the data that meets the needs of that business model. And third in importance is, what's the AI model that extracts the semantic value from that data that helps us deliver the solution? So for agentic AI, it's exactly as I think you laid out here, Heiko, is, what's the problem that we're solving? what is the underlying data that helps us inform the agentic AI, and what is it that helps us feed the chain of thought? What outboard systems do we need to interface with as part of this workflow that's being agentified, et cetera? That's the approach. Again, the data is of paramount importance, of course.
And I remember also during one of the exercises during the program, we discussed the different kinds of data that also can differentiate solutions, like the private data, public data.
That's right. Yeah.
What's the value of the solution itself, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So I have this view that data has 3 tiers, and the 3 tiers are the private data, so it's the proprietary data, which no one else has. And this is what ultimately gives you competitive advantage, because otherwise anyone can copy what you're doing unless you have proprietary data. So that's most important. Second importance is partner data. And partner data is semi-proprietary. So if you think about it, if Shomit has a company and Heiko has a company, and we're both competing with each other, neck and neck, but Heiko has a partnership with, I don't know, Patrick's company. And so Heiko now has access to Patrick's company's private, proprietary data. Who wins? Heiko, who's got access to 2 sets of proprietary data, or Shomit with access to only 1? Of course, Heiko wins. So the partner data is next most important. And the third tier of data is the public data. And literally there are tens of millions of public data sources out there. Classic ones here in the US being things like the National Weather Service database. You can query that and get weather forecasts down for any GPS location using a free API call. You want to find out demographic information. The Census Bureau has an API. You can make a free API call and get demographic detail down at the city block level of granularity. So how can we stitch these 3 tiers of data, the public, the partner, and the proprietary, together to drive a business model? And you need to think about all 3. Your competitors, who will be large companies, by the way, people exactly like Google or Microsoft, et cetera, they'll be leveraging all 3 tiers. So for you to be competitive against them, as well against startups, you too need to leverage all 3 tiers.
Yeah, so it also has to come together, right, to make a cohesive
That's right.
solution, right?
Yeah. And if one looks at the underlying data source, pick your AI model that's solving any problem, you'll see that the data that's informing it will conform to all 3 of these tiers.
And I remember you wrote an article, I think also published on the Berkeley website, about also where you kind of also laid out kind of, let's say, the risks or the things that needs to be considered when using AI. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So and there are many risks, as it turns out. So my constant statement is that the positive impacts of AI will be infinite, and the negative impacts of AI will probably be twice as great. So there are a lot of downsides, and it requires particular attention to be able to bound those risks. In AI, there are so many things that can cause problems. So hallucination we're quite familiar with by now, but hallucination, of course, will lead to faulty results. Within agentic AI, because it is built on top of chain of thought, that brings its own set of risks. And those risks are kind of innumerable, it seems to me. But some of those risks include things like adversarial prompt injection, and having your agentic AI do the wrong thing because somebody has perhaps indirectly injected data into your prompt. That's causing you to do the wrong thing. So the kind of classic example there is that if you were to type into your favorite chat bot, tell me how to build a bomb, the guardrail would say, no, I can't let you do that. How do you do that in an inventive way that might actually defeat that guardrail? You say, because these chatbots that are multimodal, so they can do things like detect images, etc. You say, tell me how to build a thing in the photo that I just uploaded. And the photo happens to be the photo of a bomb. And of course, it will go off and do exactly that. So this is a very simple example of how one can do adversarial prompt injection. So if you're relying on agentic AI to automate the processes in your company, whether they're I don't know, financial services, customer service, IT automation, etc. How do you constantly guardrail every instruction? And there's a challenge here, and the challenges are trying to be met by a whole host of different approaches. One that seems to have a bit of capability embedded within it is the constitutional classifiers that Anthropic is doing. So a way of trying to generalize some of the controls, the guardrails, so the guardrails aren't so specific that they're easily overcome. But there are so many issues. So we could spend all day talking about all of them. But you've got things like misalignment. Is the execution of the task aligned with what you thought it was going to do for you? Does the AI understand what your risk profile is? You might tell your agentic AI, I want to earn 20% on my money, make it happen. And your risk profile is actually kind of low. You're expecting it to buy name brand stocks and bonds, but you forgot to communicate that the agentic AI, and it's putting money into all kinds of shifty investment schemes because you didn't know to bound it in the right way. So alignment issues pop up. The prompt injection, as we talked about, crop up, and there's just kind of an endless stream of these. So what this means is that if we are practitioners of agentic AI, we have to make sure that we don't take the human completely out of the decision stream. And if something material needs to happen, make sure that we pop it up to the human saying, hey, Heiko, is this what you wanted to happen? I'm about to do this. Click yes or no. Because otherwise, if we just think of it being as a fire and forget interface, it may do things that we weren't expecting it to have done.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's with every technology, right? It has positive sides and negative sides, and it's something that needs to be looked into.
And there's a particular can of worms or Pandora's box that's opened here with agentic AI. So I think our paranoia needs to be very high as a consequence.
Yeah. Which is, I think, in this case, actually a good thing, just to be sure that not carried away only by technology, but also thinking about the risk factors.
Exactly. Yeah, because the risk, success follows risks. Risk is conditioned by success is conditioned by the risk. Yeah.
So maybe another topic. So as mentioned, you're a lecturer at Berkeley. So when you teach your courses on data and AI, and what kind of trends your students are most excited or anxious about? Is there a theme? Is there that you see with your students?
Yeah, no, I think the thing which they care about most nowadays is AI, because AI is just so powerful, and the range of technologies that fall under AI are also tremendous. So you can do so many different things with them. I had a bunch of graduate students in my class this past semester who were on the robotics team, who were building the self-driving car that Berkeley, I think, was entering in actual competitions against other universities. So robotics, of course, is conditioned by reinforcement learning. So let's think about reinforcement learning. What are the issues there? And within reinforcement learning, there's, speaking of downside risk, there's the whole issue of reward hacking. And how do you actually guard against reward hacking? Then, of course, agentic AI is very much in the limelight nowadays. And consequently, understanding not only how it works, because that's important, and chain of thought is very much nowadays conditioned on the language carrying the context step over step. But if you have a more sophisticated application, what are some of the other approaches one might employ, so you're not just relying on the language? Then, as we've been talking about here, Heiko, what are all the many downside risks? And these downside risks are actually help redefine what cybersecurity is and what cybersecurity will be.
Absolutely. And so if we kind of take a look into the future, if you had to bet on a automation related breakthrough in the next, let's say, 5 years, what would it be? Is there anything in particular that comes to mind?
That's a bigger question than my brain can answer, Heiko. So apologies for that. But I think agentic AI will have a tremendous impact, both for the good and for the bad. The good will be that it will help us be really efficient in what we do, and the bad is that it may, as a consequence, remove a lot of jobs from what we can do for a living. And so we have to think very carefully about this, because I think there's no society on the planet that's resilient to large-scale job loss. And merely for the sake of economic efficiency, if we leap on this agentic AI bandwagon at the cost of human employment, that may be too great a cost to bear. So we really have to think hard about that and do it very, very judiciously. But I think agentic AI is it's a major leap forward, and it's going to be built atop many different AI technologies, LLMs being one of them. But again, these things have multimodal inputs, so we'll be doing everything, and we're also using reinforcement learning to guide the decisioning. So pretty much every aspect of AI is going to be subsumed underneath this umbrella.
Awesome. And so maybe my final question here is, so for someone who is in the, maybe it's even independent from the sector, but let's say as a professional in IT or in other professions, what would be your advice? Trying to stay relevant in the age of AI.
That is the key question. So I think one has to be curious, period. And that is it. So, what I tell my students is that in their lives, this was less true in our lives, in a past generation, but in their lives, you're going to have two jobs: the one that you get paid for, and the second one you don't get paid for. The second job is called curiosity. But by being curious, you keep your first job. If you're not curious, if you're complacent, you will lose your job. And either to automation itself or to someone, a coworker who has been curious. So for all of us, we know our domain. So we should be waking up every morning and thinking about what are the economic efficiencies within this domain? How will AI impact those economic efficiencies? How do we capture those economic efficiencies without having an oversized impact on human employment? Because I think that's a danger that we have to watch out for. How do all of us stay current on what's the leading edge of technology in our domains, and just have that curiosity constantly, have that paranoia constantly, and hopefully that keeps us relevant professionally, and also helps us guide our companies towards optimal execution.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great topics here. And also, actually, this morning I read a post on LinkedIn where someone was actually posting, I think it was from the World Economic Forum, about what are the skills relevant in 2030, where, no surprise, AI was very much on top, of course, but also creative thinking. And I think that's the chance for people. So if you are creative, that's how I see it. If you're creative, the tools to turn an idea into reality and into solution, the time span is shrinking and shrinking because of AI, and you need less people. You can do a lot of things just with AI, and I think that's the great opportunity, right? So and people with ideas and innovations, I think they will kind of rise to the top.
Yeah, I think very well noted here, Heiko, is that you now have a collaborator. You have a second brain with which to brainstorm, and use that to your advantage so that you can heighten that creativity in ever smaller units of time.
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, so thanks a lot, Shomit. This was a really, really very insightful, very interesting conversation. I'm really happy that I had the opportunity to meet you and learn a lot during the German Accelerator Program. And I guess once we publish the recording, we will put all the links also in the description. So if companies are interested about maybe applying for the program, they can do that. And yeah, again, thanks a lot, Shomit. And yeah, for everyone watching, thanks, and see you in the next one.
Thank you very much, Heiko.